So we've got a great group. I will let them introduce themselves. First up, Clay.
Hi, I'm Clay Harshaw. I'm an associate professor of motorsport management at Winston-Salem State University. Put it into gaming terminology, I think I'm at a level 25 of teaching. So 25 years of teaching and about 11 years at doing this with motorsport.
All right, Robbie.
Hello, everyone. Robbie Montanola. I'm the VP of Marketing and Business Development for SRO Motorsports Group, formerly known as PRI World Challenge. And yeah, I think with David, we basically got our start racing in the Formula Car world and made my way over to the business side, as many race car drivers do. And been in the gaming industry as well, previous to SRO, with a publishing company working with game developers and software and hardware partners to create a variety of different activations and esports programs over the last 15 years, and excited to be here.
And I've mentioned quite a few times about all the great friends we have who have been loyal to RTBC and have helped us in many ways. And our next guest, that applies. Jeremy?
Thank you, brother. I appreciate being up here, and I'm a high school dropout, so now I feel super insecure sitting next to you. I'm the CEO of Atlanta Motorsports Park, and just honored to be up here, and the dumbest guy up here as it relates to esports, so I called a friend, a lifeline, and that guy right there is going to fill in the gap for me. But I do believe and support this, and I am the guy up here to try to talk about what I didn't believe in, and now I do.
All right, David. You've got a high praise from the man. Now introduce yourself, please.
Well, lucky to know these gentlemen. I'm David Cook, CEO of Racing Prodigy. I was with Mazda Motorsports for previous 9 years. We took some of the world's best gamers from iRacing. We put them into race cars, put them up against Mazda's best in our shootout, and they were always very competitive. One of the years, we gave an iRacer a scholarship to go MX5 Cup Racing, $100,000 plus prize to compete against professional drivers. Realized the skill set transfers, and ended up leaving Mazda a little bit more than a year ago to co-found Racing Prodigy. Robbie's helped me in this venture get off the ground a little bit with some good advice, and then we're partnered with AMP, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that here soon.
When I first founded my company, D-Mike Media, years ago, we dabbled in the esports world briefly. And so I got to talk to a lot of the folks in that marketplace. And I heard a guy tell me, I got a college scholarship. And I said, well, that's good. You must be a great student in addition to being a gamer. He says, no, dude, I'm just getting a scholarship to go play esports. Clay, talk about the growth of esports on the college level and a little bit more specifically on the auto racing side of things on the college level as well.
That story reminds me of something. Some of you all might remember Gary Larson's The Far Side cartoon. And I always remember this one. This was from like late 80s, early 90s. There's a kid sitting in front of a TV playing a computer game. And the mom and dad are sitting there with the little dream bubble going. And inside of it is the want ads of the newspaper saying, wanted video gamer, 50,000 hours experience, $100,000 salary. And the thing is, that's what, 30 years ago? That's our reality now. I looked it up, there are people making 7 figures playing video games now. As players, not as developers. I'm hoping developers make a lot more than that. And now on the college side, we're having leagues that are being developed. My university is looking at developing an esports management major, so doing the business side of esport. One of the things that we talked about earlier was how do you what is esport? And this thing is huge. It's gaming is bigger than movies, music, and theater type things combined. It's a huge industry now, just the gaming part. And a lot of what we call esport has nothing to do with sport. It's these fantasy games. I don't know how to really describe it. There's a tournament in Saudi Arabia that I think it's this year, maybe next year, that's going to be paying $45 million as a purse. That's one event. So it's a huge industry, and something that, from those of us that like what I like to refer to as actual sport, real sport. I'm told I'm not supposed to say that. That's a huge amount of money. And like you said, giving a scholarship to somebody to play, some kind of fantasy video game just is mind-boggling. Even more mind-boggling is the state of North Carolina has set aside $15 million to start high school and middle school esports leagues. So it's getting into our school systems now. In terms of growth, I was looking at iRacing because it seems to be really prevalent, especially in my area, because it's NASCAR. There was a huge growth between like 2017 and 2020. It was like close to 90% growth because of the pandemic. Nobody could go to the racetrack, but everybody could use the computer. Since that time, it's been stabilized a little bit, still good growth, right around 7-8%. Over 200,000 users now, individual users. So it's a huge opportunity for us.
All right, Robbie, years ago when I was doing some media coaching for a team, they let me play around on their sim. And I'll be honest with you, it shocked me, but I got pretty good, but only on a track that I knew very well up there in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, that I've been to so many times I could remember all the turns. They wanted to take me out to the track and throw me in a car, and I said, no, there's a certain pucker factor that I would not be able to go from a sim to a real car. How do you spot that in a young racer? Are these people fearless when they get into a real race car?
Yeah, it's a tough transition to dream about, really. I mean, as a real racer going into the sim, it's quite difficult to actually be as fast as the sim racers, just because we feel their inertia, we feel what it really feels like to drive these race cars around all these amazing racetracks. But the sim racers are arguably their sensory feel is vision and steering inputs and of course pedal inputs. They don't feel what the car is doing G-force wise, and so it takes time to understand what the car is really capable of doing, and to find that grip level. But we've seen huge success going in, and of course David could probably talk more about this, what they've done recently, but over the past decade, what we've done in the GT racing side of things is take drivers, go through different types of programs. There is the GT Academy, of course. We just saw the Gran Turismo movie that just was in movie theaters. Jan, the driver that was within the context of that movie, he raced with our European championship and won Le Mans, won Spa, won a bunch of races, and it translated quite well. Other sim racers, there is that fear factor of like, this is a real thing. Like, there's no reset button. You hit a wall, and it doesn't feel very good when you hit walls, and especially at tracks like Road America, where you're going really fast down some of these straightaways, or the Kink. The Kink isn't a very fun place to crash, but we've all been there in the real side of things, but in video games you hit reset. But so there is that issue to transition into what a real car could do. But I think these days, with how good simulators are and how precise they are, how great the tracks are modeled, it's really easy for those skills to transfer over into the real world component and just be able to go jump in and be fairly fast. But within a few sessions, once you figured out the racetrack, figured out the dynamics of the car, be able to put in lap times that are comparable to a relatively fast driver.
Canada Corner was my downfall at Road America, which I understand from talking to racers is not unusual at all. But you're right. When I crash the sim, I press a button. When a racer crashes a car, David, that can be a lot of money. How do you get that mentality out of these racers' mindset? Because I saw it on the short track side too with a very wealthy driver. He didn't care about wrecking the car. The low budget guys did. How do you get the mindset of this gets expensive when you crash when you're not on a sim?
Well, all of the competitions I've been part of, Mazda or with Racing Prodigy, the company always paid for the crash damage. So they weren't limited by fear of having to write a check. But once one of the racers that Mazda gave a scholarship to got into the MX-5 Cup Series, very competitive, lots of 3 wides, you could tell he was limited, I don't think by fear, but by the fact that he didn't have the extra money to be able to write a check. And then the other racers picked up on that and took advantage. But the individuals who we've put in, and between Mazda and Racing Prodigy, we're closing in on, I think, maybe 30 drivers so far, all but just a few had no concerns on fear. They were up to speed within 1 or 2 sessions with the pro level drivers, which was unbelievable, including a mobile winner, which is still hard for us to really understand how he was that quick right from the get-go. They get the extra sensory, as Robbie was talking about. They've already proven themselves, at least this group or these groups, as the world's best. So they already have the car control. They already have the understanding. They're used to winning. They're used to staying on track and finishing lap after lap. And then they get in the car, and they were brilliant. Last analogy I could draw here is at Mazda, starting in 2020, we took go-karters, the country's best go-karters, and we put them into spec MX-5 race cars. We added another shootout within our MX-5 Cup shootout. So we had a dozen go-karters every year come, and for the most part, they had never been in a race car before. They'd been in a go-kart, a cart. They were generally 4 to 20 seconds off pace their first day. Then their second day, they were within 8 seconds. Their second event, they were generally within a second or on pace. But that first 4 to 6 sessions, they generally struggled. And these were the best karters in the country. The sim racers, all but just a few, are within 1 second or 2 on their first day, and about half of them are within a half a second of the fastest guys in their first or second session. The skill set transferring immediately is for sim racers to real racing we haven't seen in any other direction or any other style of car.
Gamers can be a unique group, though, to deal with personality-wise. How did you see them meshing with a real race team?
The 12 that we just brought to Atlanta Motorsports Park and ran our Prodigy Week Part 1 a month ago, they were, and Jeremy could maybe speak to this a little bit, and Kent Stacy was our engineer, the nicest group of 12 human beings you'll ever meet. The most appreciative, because you have to, maybe, I think it makes sense if you think about it. These individuals don't have any money. They don't have other opportunities to go racing. They love racing as much or as more than most people I would wager even in this room. And to get to where they got, they've put in countless hours in their basement or their office or their bedroom on the game with absolute passion for this sport. And nobody's given them an opportunity to get behind the wheel. And then they have this opportunity. How genuine, authentic, appreciative, intelligent, it was unbelievable. It's extremely motivating to give opportunities to people like that.
Jeremy, you want to talk about that
Yeah,
event?
you know, it's interesting because I think that they're not around the motorsports community where it's the cockery and all the pitching and everything that goes along with it. So they don't have that, and they're appreciative. But to go back, I'm going to confess something. I've adopted, and am into esports, but hated it, completely hated it. I'm going to offend so many people with that statement, but it's simply this: is you either adapt and you innovate, or you become obsolete. And what's interesting, me as a race car driver like these gentlemen, we have multi-dimensional input with how we interact with the car and the cars around us and the racetrack below us. And in sim racing, it's one-dimensional. So they're making a lot of fine-tuned decisions based on very little data input. But when they get to something that's visceral and real, those decisions are easier and better. And I think that's why the karting community doesn't do as well, because they're used to that multi-dimensional input. And it's shocking to me because the karting community is one of the best, people that you can pull from, or the autocross for the racing side of things. So we've adopted it. We're pushing it forward, and that's where we created a ladder to motorsports to be able to pull people out of that esports community and to get them into the real, rubber to the road type environment.
Dennis, I want to jump in here a minute because you touched on something that is very near and dear to my heart. And sometimes we get this glazed over look in our eyes now, and quite honestly, I do sometimes too, when we go down the path of DE&I, diversity, and the whole conversation around how do we tap into new markets and bring them into motorsports, right? We talk a lot about that. And I think I was talking to some people during break where it's like, okay, let's get down to the tactics. How do we actually do this? And I've also overheard, because I sit silently during break and just listen to people talk. And one of the things that I hear is that there's people that are driving race cars that maybe aren't as talented as other people that aren't driving a race car. It seems like sim racing gives that maybe lower income kid the opportunity to prove themselves. It gives women the opportunity to prove themselves because women don't get as much seat time as men statistically. Are you guys seeing that across the board? And do you think that this could be the secret sauce to really opening up the floodgates?
So, I'm going to give kudos to Beth and Jill and some of the other people, and I want to talk about this for a minute because 2/3 of my staff, or maybe more, is women. And what's interesting is I listened to a psychological study about teams and what works and what doesn't. And if it's all women, it doesn't work. If it's all men, it doesn't work. If it's a majority of women, it does work. So let's talk about what's fucking real right now. Number two, we have what is called a junior discovery experience. And I love this. I ran this program personally where we would have, it was between 7 and 12 kids that were from 5 to 9 years old. And we'd put them into go-karts. And probably half of them would be girls. And every time, universally, the girls kicked the boys' ass. And I loved it, And we had to put ski ropes on the back of the go-karts because they'd pin it to win it, the boys. And the girls would look back and listen, oh, okay, less throttle, more throttle, oh, that's the brake. That's a novel idea. But it's really interesting. And again, so I'm sorry I digressed to a previous conversation earlier, but I totally agree with you. It is a wallet race. It is a perception race. And somebody mentioned that there was, girls can't drive F1 cars. Has nothing to do with girls or gender being able to drive F1 cars. It's an opportunity, and it's a wallet race. It has nothing to do with talent. Mm-hmm. Talent is never at the top of the racing platform, ever.
Well,
it is
they
a
argue
wallet race.
F1 it is, though. Right?
Sorry?
I've heard arguments that F1 it is.
I think it's bullshit, and I'm just going to say it. And I think that, women, if you put a man and a woman in a car, and in a few laps, probably 7 out of 10 times the woman is going to be better than the man in the car. Now, does that translate because of a psychological suppression of everybody saying, men are better than women, like the F1 guy that needs to be strangled? I think that there is some psychology with that, and some, I don't think I can or can't be because everybody has said. So
Well, the other thing that I've noticed with sim racing esports is people of color. Look in the audience, folks. Just look to your left and right, right? My children are biracial, and that's something that I look at and look around. And we look in this audience, and it's not incredibly diverse here. But when you go to racetracks, it's the same thing. You sit there and you look around, it's not very diverse. But when I started getting into esports, I see a lot more diversity than when I go to a physical track.
Yeah, what sim racing I think has opened up for our industry and motorsports is really become the new gateway. It's accessible to a lot more people than go-karting, than sprint cars, et cetera. And all you need is the game and some hardware that could range from $200 to $300 to $20,000. But a lot of the fastest sim racers that compete in our 6 different pro level esport championships, a lot of them don't have all the fancy gear. They've just spent hours and hours and hours perfecting their craft, driving these racetracks and being the best at what they do. And it's opened the doors for a lot more people to be able to play.
The 10,000 hours, outliers.
And they, and then what
Unbelievable
we've shown,
rider.
or what we've seen at our events, and we produce events, throughout the world, the Spa 24 Hours, the Bathurst 12 Hour, a lot of the community that has grown up around the sim racing side of the sport are now becoming fans of what we do in real life. And they're coming out to the racetrack, they're watching our live streams, they're interacting with our traditional motorsport audience, and becoming actively engaged in the community to become the newest fans of our sport. And from SRO in general, we've just seen our average age drastically become younger and younger every single year. Which I think, as you noticed, as you mentioned, a lot of the motorsport world has just actively gotten older and older and older. And now we're seeing a trend that I think is attributable to sim racing, is that there is this active audience, whether it's, sports cars or IndyCar or Formula One or NASCAR, they're bringing in new blood because of the accessibility of sim racing and video games.
Just a quick follow-up to that. And are you finding that you have to invite them? Does that make sense? Like, I notice with women and minorities that, I'll put it out there, I'm white, my dad's white, my family's all white. I feel like there doesn't have to be an invite. The invite is assumed. When you get to minorities and women, there has to be an invite extended. Are you seeing that with esports in general? Because, yeah, they may play online, but to go to that next level, are you finding that you have to invite them?
I don't know necessarily if we need to invite them, but I think being able to show diversity within that ranking and show them at this highest level of pro sim racing has opened the doors to be able to bring more people to the community. I mean, even within our own racing championships in the GT world, we have Samantha Tan, who races a BMW in our GT World Challenge Series in a GT3. She has an esports team as well that she promotes actively so that she can bring members of that community into our normal motorsports world. And I mean, the amounts of people that I just watch, go to take photos with her on a grid walk is just amazing. And so I think there's a lot of the B scene, that helps generate interest into what we do. I think in the case of sim racing, a lot of it you're kind of hiding behind that computer, but it does give you that first interaction, that first step. And then I think it's up to, like for us, it's up to our championship and our series to really open that door to say, hey, come out, come join in the fun and be a part of this community that's greater than just sports car racing. It's inclusive to the sim racing community. It's inclusive to just motorsports in general, as well as just we want new fans, new families, new people to come and enjoy the sport.
It's like the voice of motorsports, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Pick me.
And if you've got no budget as an iRacer and you're on that minimal budget and you're good at it, you will attract the steering wheel, the pedals. You'll get a whole system because they want you promoting their brand. So years ago, before sim racing, karting was the gateway drug to running other forms of racing. But talking to some karters, I mean, they could spend 6 figures easily without even blinking.
Easily.
Yeah, without blinking an eye and without even being a full-time racer, they can blow through 6 figures real quick. Where, in your opinion, do racing simulators fit in this new model of driver development?
I think, from us, we have 5 different championships that we race on any given race weekend, from the Toyota GR Cup all the way to our top tier Fanatec GT World Challenge, which is the GT3 cars. End of the day, costs a lot of money to go to racing. And I think, like you said, karting these days is just astronomical. To do a national pro tour in a kart, you can spend less racing in our touring car championship, which has live TV, full PR, social, and manufacturer support at that. You could do that for cheaper than karting, and you get introduced into the sports car world. So I think you see a lot of people transitioning to that model that have budgets, just because they have family members or family businesses that can help them get to that point. I think with sim racing, it's a lot tougher because, like David said, a lot of these people are coming from, they're not coming from very high net worth families that can spend $100,000 or $200,000 to go racing at even just the entry level, pro level to get into our sport. They may be able to do club racing like SCCA or NASA a lot easier, which is great, and that gives them that stepping stone into a real car and into the real world. But to get to the highest pro level ranks, it's still very tough. It's still much of a money game.
So I want to jump in here real quick. So I want to give Prodigy a plug and what the Motorsports Ladder and what we're trying to do internally with AMP. We have a Motorsports Ladder where we want to get them at 5 years old, and now we're going to have e-karts where we can start them at 3, which is a bit ridiculous, but we're trying. So we work them through all the way through the process, and there is that esports community that we want to integrate into that ladder, and that's where Prodigy came in. So Prodigy has this platform in which you can have all these esport racers come in, compete to be able to get a ride in a race car, and they get a ride in a race car through Primal Racing, which is a racing school that's on site at Atlanta Motorsports Park, and then they do a shootout for an ultimate ride in the race car. So that is a platform in which we can pull people out of the e-world into the reality, and that sounds bad, but into the real world of racing, and to be able to integrate them so that they have a channel to be noticed and integrated into our sport. And you can speak more to this than I can, but it's something where we see this and we know this, and we know that we have to have an avenue from which these people have to come out of that world.
Well, 37% of racing gamers of gamers, it's 3.2 billion. 37% prefer racing games. Tens of millions compete competitively in esports competitions throughout the world. And according to Logitech, 85% want to be real-world racers. Much more diverse than traditional motorsport. So when you incentivize and provide that transition opportunity, and you lower the barriers, you lower access, a byproduct of that system, which is what we're trying to build here, be the world's first E2Real sports league, will be a more diverse group. I personally have seen and been part of strategies to try to bring more diversity into a certain program, and from what I can tell, they almost all fail. I think, and I'm not sure how to fix those strategies. We've got a problem at the base of traditional motorsport. So if esports is in the future more of the new karting, which I think it will be. I've got a 10-year-old, and we wouldn't put her in go-karts. Even if we could, we would put her in sim racing. and she would be just as well off, if not maybe better, come 13 or 14 before we would put her in an actual race car. So I think others are going to realize that as well. And when parents are choosing between what game to introduce their kid to, a shoot 'em up game or a racing game, our belief is that racing games will only grow to be more popular. So we know the skill set transfers. We know there's a huge opportunity. We know it fixes a lot of problems that traditional motorsport has. It's very easy for us to put on tournaments. We work with 4 different game publishers. We've got multiple golden tickets across each of the games. We bring them to an amazing racetrack. We put them on their autocross, their skid pad. We do media training. We put them in the physical fitness assessment with pit fit training. Works with a lot of the NASCAR IndyCar drivers. And then we put them in the Radical SR1s with the goal of later this year or next year doing a draft to where we pay racing contracts to 20 or 24 of them and build a series for them. And we think will be the most diverse racing series on planet Earth as a result. And our hope is that the more exposure, more opportunities, we can expand motorsport. It needs to be more relatable, more transparent, and certainly through gaming and a platform like this with partners like Jeremy, that's our goal. We want to grow the SRO, we want to grow NASCAR, we want to grow the whole pie here. And for us, the way to do that is through esports.
All right. Clay, go ahead.
Just one thing that David said. One thing that you'll notice, like on our racing platform, is there's no fire. You crash, there's no fire. It's lack of a better way to put it, it's not bloody.
It's not hot.
It's not violent. The crashes could be property violent, but not bodily violent. And I'm not going to put a kid in front of a shooter type game. To Jamie's question earlier about diversity things, my university is an HBCU. We're a historically black institution. One of my students is Rajah Caruth. He didn't start racing actual vehicles until he was about 14, 15 years old. He started on sim racing, iRacing type things. And he's probably doing it right now or later tonight instead of studying for exams like I want to. But it is an opportunity for not the stereotypical groups coming into racing. One of the things that NASCAR is doing with their eNASCAR program is a college league. And the way that I understand it, they're wanting to structure it is based on the traditional athletic conferences. So most of the HBCU athletic conferences are against each other. So my institution would be put in with the CIAA athletic conference, which is an all HBCU conference. So there is that opportunity to bring new folks to racing, bring in new fans and new drivers.
Talk a little bit about, and this will be our final question for this group, but boy, oh boy, this has been a great panel. Talk about the use of racing games and leagues, whether it's on the college level, whether it's stuff you're doing there at Racing Prodigy, using the Sims to enhance the marketing value for sponsors of real race cars.
Probably me. Our title sponsors, Fanatec, and they're they make the simulator wheelbases, wheel pedals, cockpits, etc. So the reason they came to us and they wanted to partner with us globally was to create a dynamic where a sim component could impact a real world championship at the highest professional level in GT racing. And so what we did was create a live tournament for the drivers of the real race cars that are competing in that particular weekend during some of our events. And it they earn points towards the team championship, and it has persuaded that team championship to swing one way or another depending on how their sim races go. And then they wanted to use that platform to be able to show the power of sim racing, and that the sim racing component is much like the real life component. I mean, at the Spa 24 Hour one year, we took the pole time from the real race and the pole time from the sim race, and it was within tenths of a second of each other. So that's how accurate the game that we utilize, which is the Assetto Corsa Competizione, which is our official game, and we were able to look at the data and say, okay, this is 100% relatable, and you have a driver that's racing in the Spa 24 now in the simulator and doing applicable lap times on either side, which is quite the feat of engineering and dev work that goes behind the scenes from the game developers. So we're able to turn that into the spectacle of what we do, and it's landed us a title sponsor across all of the regions that we race in: Europe, Australia, Asia, and here in America. Going to the team and driver level, I think what it's allowed our teams to do is look at a component to their team model that allows them to, we have 7 to 8 race weekends a year. What do they do in the time between that? What type of content, what type of stories can they produce with all that time in between things? So they've employed sim racing drivers to compete under their team name within our professional sim racing championships that we have. So that gives them another opportunity to be visible. So they could put the same liveries that they run in the real car on our race weekends, they can use in the sim side and give additional value to their partners there. And our sim broadcasts that we do on YouTube and Twitch equal viewership ratings that we see on our real races at times too as well. So it's drives a lot of eyeballs. The YouTube chat, which is a terrible thing to read, I'll just put that out there. But it's amazing how many comments are made on a real race weekend or a sim race weekend that they're like, is this the sim or is this real life? It is so similar now that it's very hard to tell the difference. And then you have that blending of both communities wanting to watch both types of activities because it's just interesting and it's engaging for them to watch. So there's a lot of people that go, sim racing's not real racing, but they're still really racing, and it's still applicable, and that's why programs like Racing Prodigy work so well, is because you can transfer those skills into the real car, and it's not like you're playing a controller-based game that's like a football game like Madden or something like that. You're not throwing the football with a controller. So in what we do, it's apples to apples.
To your point there about transferring the skill, I was at the NASCAR E-Revolution conference or seminar last month or so, and one of the things that they said there, I think it was Anthony Alfredo, who moved from sim to actual driving, was it's not a game, it's a simulation. And that's where I kind of draw that thing of, is this a game or is it a sport? I've argued for 20 years that racing is a sport because I deal with the stick and ball sport people who say if it doesn't have a stick or a ball, it's not a sport. And anybody can turn left, anybody can drive a car. It's like, yeah, get out there and try to do it, kind of that, like you were saying, the pucker factor. It's the, we have to be able to transfer those skills. Now I've lost my point. I'm the absent-minded professor too.
I don't know, Dennis, I think you've coined the pucker factor now. There may be a scale of 1 to 10, and that's what determines whether it's a game or
and trust me, I experienced it. I didn't even want to sit near the race car. That was it.
So here's an interesting aspect of the pucker factor, and this just came to my mind, is that because it's me sitting up here as a pucker factor. But no, what's interesting is there is a pucker factor of you running a car into a wall, right, and hurting yourself or the car, and then having some people aware of that. But in esports, there's a pucker factor of everybody that is on the esport platform seeing you, and the difference is they heckle the shit out of you. You
Yes, they
suck.
do.
You're no good. I mean, so there is an aspect of a pucker factor that's a it's a ratio, or it's a division different than the pucker factor of crashing a car.
They can be brutal.
That's the main reason my 13-year-old son will not stream. He's hilarious. Like, we hover around his bedroom door to just listen to him. Like, even his sister does it. But that's a great point. I didn't even think about that, but it is a very
I
different.
didn't either till
And I
just
think
now.
that's it's the physical pain versus the emotional and psychological pain of how brutal people can be. Which one's worse? I don't know. Physical can be healed.
Well, let's put
Rather
a
crash into a wall than get abused emotionally.
yeah.
Sticks
Let-
and stones.
There you go. Let's put a bow on this one. Final thoughts, David.
I think in traditional motorsport, I hear a lot about lifestyle, brand. I think the main word that I keep hearing when I go to esports conferences or talking with people there is being authentic. So if you're going to do anything with esports community, don't try to think of it as just what kind of marketing tactic to try to draw them as audience, but what value can you provide in an authentic way? Because there's a big marketing opportunity or market opportunity there.
Robbie.
We're here in partnership with PRI this weekend. We have the PRI Esports Arena that we've put together, and we'll be hosting races with sim professional drivers tomorrow, a mix of real world drivers. We call them real world drivers for some reason now, but real world racers versus sim racers, and some influencers on Friday, and then kind of some open rig driving on Saturday. But if you want to see it in action, definitely come visit us. We're in the Lucas Oil Stadium, and we've got a full arena set up with a lot of other sim racing brands that are associated there as well. And we've got a couple rigs that you can actually drive. So if you want to really understand what sim racing is, I invite you to come over. But definitely, check out our YouTube channel, GT World. Not only is all of our races that we do worldwide on that channel, but a lot of our sim races. Watch a broadcast. The broadcasts are entertaining. They're casted by similar voices that you would hear on our real racing series. And it's entertaining. There's a little more spectacular crashes because people can hit reset. But the entertainment value there is much like what you see in normal broadcasts. And we're fortunate to be able to work with so many great circuits to get licenses to put into our official game. But definitely there's a few more that we're looking to add on the America side too, as well as our calendar grows, and we really try to mimic what we do in the real world. So like David said, esports is a very interesting world. It's kind of the wild, wild west at the moment. But there's definitely ways to utilize it to build community, build an element of discovery for your circuits, and just to be able to help people enjoy what you do in a digital fashion. So thank you for having us.
Jeremy.
One of our core values is the day you stop innovating is the day you start to become obsolete. And so it's been pulling hen's teeth with me to be able to move towards this esports, and we have over the last 9 years. So I just implore you to pivot and to be able to chase this and go after it. Otherwise, you're going to be someone of yesterday rather than tomorrow.
Clay, bring us home.
Yeah. You sound like my mom. She can't remember. She's always calling me my brother's name. Kind of the same thing Jeremy is saying. This is our future. So if your track's not already on iRacing, find out what it takes to get on it. Find out what it takes to get them to pay you for use of your track.
Very good. All right, before I give the three things, we need you gentlemen to stay put here before we bring on the media panel. What did we learn from this panel? Well, lots of e-racers, they wouldn't have a chance to race if it wasn't for this opportunity. Maybe this is a great way to diversify our sport and to bring more people to the sport that can't write that big check. Huge marketing opportunities when it comes to the sim racing leagues, and I love the crossovers that you guys are doing over there at SRO. to show the value. And finally, 37% of gamers want to race. That's huge, because if you look at that gamer market, these are the new people we want to hit up for real racing. And if 37% are already choosing racing, that's a huge new market for real racing, air quotes on that one. But we've heard this word a lot, be authentic, because they will see through your BS.
Dennis, target marketing, target marketing.
Absolutely. Let's give them a big